So, to get started, obviously, tonight we're going to talk about trending scams. There are a lot out there, but we don't have all the time. So, we picked some of the top four that we have seen frequently, and we can really talk about how the fraudsters do it, how are some common red flags, what you can do to protect yourself, and if you think you are being scammed, what to do to then protect yourself further. So,
Mhm.
good stuff, very thorough. All right, so we're going to start with romance and friendship.
Again, I'm Lacey. I'm a fraud analyst here at Campus USA Credit Union, and I'm going to go over romance and friendship scams. So, you might have heard of romance scams, but friendship scams are something new we've seen recently. However, it's an exact copy and paste of a romance scam. Essentially, these fraudsters create these online identities. They're going to do their research on you and make sure they get to know your interests, your likes, whatever you're into. They're going to build a personality that fits what you like. And or they may pose as somebody you know. You might not have heard from this friend in a while. You suddenly get a new friend request and you thought you were friends with this person already. Or they could pose as a family member you haven't heard from in a while. So we're going to go over red flags to look out for if this happens to you. So, like I said, you may suddenly get a friend request from a celebrity, an influencer, or maybe you already follow them and they suddenly message you out of the blue. It could be also a family member or friend is messaging you suddenly on a new social media platform that they haven't contacted you before on. Some things to look out for is certainly if they tell you to keep it a secret. Keeping it secret and keeping it safe is not cute. They don't want you to tell other people. Because those people might tell you, hey, this is moving pretty fast, or there's some red flags here to look out for. So they do try to tell you to just keep it to yourself.
Mhm.
Um, they may ask you for your bank account information to kind of financially help you out. They may go as far as asking for your username and or password. And the thing is that these are long-term schemes. So friendship and romance scams are not just out of the blue and it happens in a couple weeks. These go on for months, and unfortunately, we see these go on for years. It may go as far as you're a fiance, you're eventually going to get married. And so you feel like you trust your partner, right? Because at that point,
Mhm.
that's what you think it is, with your online banking credentials, or if they want to financially help you out, you kind of trust them to do this. But um, the end goal is always money. So I hate to say that, but eventually they're going to ask you for money. Hey, I'm going to send you $600, or I'm going to deposit $600 into your account. I just need your user ID and password, or I'm going to send you this check via mail. But can you send me $300 of that back, or whatever it is? They may even go as far as, I have a business proposal for you, or can you deposit money into this cryptocurrency ATM? These are just red flags to look out for, that they eventually get to. And it's very hard to miss those red flags, but also just take some time to kind of think about these relationships that you're having online.
So, if Taylor Swift messages me and she wants to be my bestie
Yeah.
and she tells me not to tell anyone,
Yeah.
I'm gonna pause. I'm gonna pause.
Yeah. Maybe if you get a
Good
friendship
idea.
bracelet in the mail, I don't know,
Right,
that might seal the
right.
deal.
But yeah, don't tell anyone because other people are going to tell me that's not Taylor
Yeah.
Swift.
No,
Right, right.
fortunately not.
But that I joke about it, but that does happen. It
It really
does.
does.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, some tips to avoid being scammed. Certainly keep your social media profile private. I know it's nice to just leave it public and anybody can kind of browse in and out, but that does pose a huge risk because you're providing so much information to these people online. You may have bought a new house recently, a new car. Maybe there's a milestone as if you've had a new child or you've celebrated a birthday. Think about it. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
having a pet, having a child, birthdays, your house, your car, these are all security questions, and you're
Right.
just giving it away for free. So be sure to keep your social media private and don't overshare online. Like I said before, be wary of any new friend request. If suddenly somebody's reaching out to you and maybe they have very limited profile information. So certainly look into them, do your research. Do they have a new profile? Do they have history? Do they have a lot of photos, friends, interest? If suddenly this person's reaching out to you, I'd be very concerned if their history is very limited.
Hmm.
Um, and we have seen recently, unfortunately, where family members are reaching out to somebody out of the blue, like I said, on a new profile. They've never talked to them before on like a social media profile, asking for gift cards, asking for, payments and weird forms that don't seem normal.
Hmm.
Maybe they're in financial trouble. These are just things to look out for, to avoid, falling for this kind of scam. And then remember, these individuals, like I said, they're going to talk to you for months. They're going to build this relationship with you. They're going to want to get to know you and kind of be the perfect person for you. So just be cautious of that. Certainly, you know, move on if you feel like there's red flags. There's nothing wrong with, stopping communication with them if you feel uncomfortable.
That goes into our next topic on that
Yeah.
for sure.
So certainly, if you've noticed any of those red flags, again, strange payments, trying to financially help you out, it's a secret, stop communicating and block them. Number one,
Mhm.
always. It's not going to hurt their feelings. And if it does, too bad, so sad. You're the only person who can protect yourself from these scams. Certainly be cautious with any new online contacts. Mention this time and time again. If somebody's reaching out of the blue, I'd be a little concerned about that. Update any banking details and or passwords. So again, we have seen this go as far as several years where they've been in a quote unquote romance or friendship with this person. We have seen it unfortunately affect the younger generation now. So this is not a scheme that is just for the older generation that it used to be. Now we are seeing younger people online,
Mhm.
teenagers underage who have access to these social media profiles are suddenly being contacted by people. And that's kind of why we include the friendship scams because they're not necessarily looking for a romantic relationship. They're looking for somebody to build a friendship with. And that could be, unfortunately, your child or a child you know. So if you have shared any of your username or password with anybody at all, really that now is as sacred as your social security number. You shouldn't be sharing that with anybody. So update that immediately. Be sure to add extra verification to your online banking. So that could be two-factor authentication where you receive an additional code. Thankfully, Campus already has that set up, but you could also add a passphrase to your account. So if you call in and or you come in, they would have to know this special passphrase in order to assist you. And then again, like I said, make that social media private. Make them work for your friendship.
And you mentioned that, you know, the younger generation, teenagers, they have access to social media. Not only that,
Yeah.
they have access to sending money. They have Apple
Yes.
Cash,
Right.
they have Venmo, they have ways to disperse funds very
Yes.
easily. And they can be naive too, and um their best protection really is knowing the dangers and knowing those red flags. So
For sure.
um hopefully parents are educating, and
Please.
yes, talk to your teenagers.
Yes, we do see these children unfortunately getting random checks from friends online, and they obviously have a bank account because their parents are great, want to get them financially set up,
Yeah,
and then they use mobile banking to make that mobile deposit, and it's a scam check, and then
oh,
now they're responsible for that. It's
Yeah.
very sad.
yeah, it really is.
And they just didn't know.
No.
Yeah.
All right, Jessica.
All right. Hi, I'm Jessica. I'm also part of the fraud team here at campus, and I'm going to go over job scams for us. So if you're job hunting or you know somebody who is, just a couple things we want you to keep in mind is that scammers, they will advertise just like honest employers will. You might find online ads. They might be found through job sites or even social media posts, but we do have some things that you can look for. Some of the red flags for these first would be too good to be true. I think of this in terms of, someone's offering you maybe a dream job position with really high compensation, maybe what's way more than average for that type of job, and maybe it's requiring very little effort on your end. It's just not the scenario that's going to be good news. Unfortunately, it's just not a realistic thing. But vague job descriptions also, they might not be able to explain what you're going to be responsible for or what your job duties really entail. Or unprofessional communication. If you're communicating a lot through email or text, and you notice that there's a lot of grammar errors, spelling errors, not just a one time, but pretty consistently,
Mm-hmm.
that there's errors there, that would be a red flag. Also, any high pressure tactics. Oftentimes when we're applying for jobs, we do want things to move quickly. We're excited to get started, but there shouldn't ever be any pressure for it to, or being pushed into it. Also, payment required up front. You should never have to pay to begin a job, or an unusual interview process. And I was curious about this, the unusual interview processes. These days, there may not be a standard one size fits all job interview. They might vary depending on the company that you're about to go work for. But if it's a really brief interview, the person is maybe not even interested in hearing how your past job experience is relevant to the new position. They're just using the time to ask you personal information questions. Maybe you came prepared to ask them a couple of questions and they can't really answer it, or they're dodging the questions. Things like that would be an odd interview to look out for. And also any requests for banking information, especially right up front. And oftentimes with job scams, we see it's really popular for them to ask for online banking credentials. Certainly no employer should ever ask for that. So those are the things to look for.
And the interesting thing about job scams too is you feel less guarded with some of that personal information. I mean, it's a very standard thing to put your name,
Mhm.
your address, birth date on a job application. And
So
then,
true.
yeah, they reel you in and then, okay, well, now we need to have your direct deposit information. So give me your banking
Yep.
information. And they know that they're going after people who obviously are looking for jobs. And so they're a vulnerable target, and they know that. That's the whole point. They are looking for vulnerable people to prey on. So,
I
Right.
agree. Totally
yeah,
looking to take advantage of that. Mhm.
hmm really good red flags on that.
So what you can do, some tips to avoid being scammed. Of course, right away, we're just never paying for the promise of a job. You can do some research, take your time doing some research on the company or even the person that you're talking back and forth with. Type in some keywords like scam or complaint when you're doing your research so you can see what other applicants have to say, maybe some of their reviews or what their experience was. Also, we would recommend to verify that the job openings are found on the company's official website and not
Yeah.
just through third-party sites.
Yeah.
And you can check if the email address that you're corresponding with actually matches the company's website and that there's not any changes to it or any small details that are a mismatch that might not be noticed at first. We also want to be aware of any cleared check scams. What we mean by that is oftentimes with job scams, what we see is that the employer will send you a payment up front, typically in the form of a fraudulent check. They want you to deposit it. When those funds are available, they'll ask you maybe to send some back to them. And
hmm
unfortunately, turns out to be a bad check. And then the loss, might be on your account if you
Mhm.
sent them funds.
Right. And a lot of people don't realize that if your account is drawn negative, that you're responsible for that. And
Yeah.
say it's not drawn negative, but you have those funds in there, you can't reclaim it once it's out.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, some people just don't know
Sad.
that, or they don't realize that there's no recourse, and wire's just as bad.
So
Yes.
true. And it's
Um,
tough too. I've heard, that they might give you what seems like a reasonable
Sure.
explanation at the
Yeah.
time. Oh, I'm sending you this so you can start paying for your own supplies before you get started.
Hmm.
But yeah,
They
them asking to send any
Yeah.
funds back is not good. Not
It's
good
oh,
like,
stuff.
they've
oh,
perfected it.
yeah, they're like, oh, it's remote
Yeah.
work. You just have to buy your laptop or compute,
Yeah.
whatever it
Right.
is. And it's like, no, I feel like as an employer, you should maybe provide that to
Yeah.
me.
They
Yeah.
Why
should
don't
they
Listen
the
to
should
your
have a
gut.
the
they should
check
have a
maybe
direct
says it's
way.
from like John Doe of Minnesota, and you're like, but the company is this name? Like,
I'm
that's
not going
weird.
to work for John. Yeah. So
Lots of red flags. Lots of red
Yeah.
flags.
all right. But if you've done all of that, you've taken all the preventative measures to try to avoid those scams, and something happens and you still do end up in that position, here's what we would recommend to do. The first step, just to stop communicating with them altogether and be cautious of any new online contacts because they might have shared your information with other scammers.
Mhm.
Certainly notify your financial institution, mainly letting them know if you shared any information with this other party so they
Mhm.
can help you get it secured. They can update it, change your account number if needed, or your online banking credentials. We would also say to file a police report if you've been a victim, or especially if you've suffered a loss of any kind, and to also consider freezing your credit or placing a fraud alert on your credit. And this would be important if throughout the job application process you did end up sharing your social, your date of birth, those
Mhm.
personal identifying details, because having those in place will make it much harder for anyone to open a new account or a loan in your name.
Mhm.
Right. And that's the thing. That's what makes it so easy for fraudsters is like if they have that information, it's like gold.
Mhm.
It's not as
Yeah.
hard as it was, 10, 15 years ago to just do an application online and then gain access to a line of credit and, use it all. So,
That's right.
I hate to
and
say it, it's very easy.
it is. And
I
then it takes
know.
years to come back from that as, a victim. So,
Yeah.
And even if you're not a victim, you can still freeze your credit
Yeah.
right?
if you want to. Even if you don't have credit and you're just getting started out in life,
Mm-hmm.
freeze your credit. And then all you have to do is call and unfreeze it when you are applying for a loan or an account somewhere. And then like, I'm the only one using this information. And then after 24 hours, the freeze goes back on. I mean, it's beneficial.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
You're
it's
in
great.
control of it.
absolutely. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm going to go over rental scams. Rental scams is a scheme in which fraudsters aim to steal money from victims looking to rent a property. What they're going to do is trick you into paying rent or deposits and fees when there's not actually a property available.
Mm. And that I know that we're talking about a role in the picture. It says apartment for rent. We've
Hmm.
talked about this before that um it these kinds of scams can be done through Airbnb. It can be done through
Yeah,
other vacation rental sites. I think those sites have gotten better at locking that down, like verified renter,
yeah,
and that sort of thing. There are some safeguards in place, but say you take it to another platform that they don't have those safeguards in place. Th I think a lot of these things do apply for the
for sure.
for
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
situation as well.
So, some red flags to look out for. Again, too good to be true. I feel like this is the phrase of the night. If it is too good to be true, it probably is. And this is really to lock you in. So they're giving you that dream job. They're offering you that dream apartment for, a rent that doesn't match the market value.
Right.
Really think about that. If it's a rental agreement that is beyond too good to be true, I would really question that. Um, they act very competitive, so they're going to pressure you to pay immediately, so you don't think logically, hey, you got to pay this. Deposit up front, the pet fee, and then first and last month's rent. But you haven't even seen the property yet or
Right.
met the person. And they really do this to kind of build that pressure. They may even say, if you pay me now, we're going to ignore all the other competitors. So we have seen that mentioned before by victims where they're like, well, they told me there was other people betting, and so I just needed to go all in. I'd
Mm,
be very concerned about that. Certainly pay in a way that you're comfortable with. If they're asking you to pay in a strange way, like gift cards, again, cryptocurrency is a huge one we're seeing with those Bitcoin ATMs. Unfortunately, that's a thing, and that's what they're abusing. So maybe stick to cash or wire transfers only. Another thing to look out for is vague answers and no showing. So you want to meet up with them. You want to get to know the person that you're going to be paying rent to. I'd hope you'd want to get to know them because that's somebody you're under a binding agreement with.
right.
Um, so definitely try to get to know them and meet them. See the property in person. Don't you want to know what you're committing to and what you're paying for? If they dodge all of that, I'd probably cease communication with them. That's a big red flag to me. You want something tangible, so be concerned if it doesn't seem tangible. They may provide generic photos on the site, or they might not even do a proper screening process. I would be concerned if they didn't care about who was renting a property from them. They own that property, so I'd hope they'd be concerned about who's actually renting that property. So if they're like, no credit checks, we don't care about your background, no, references, I would maybe also see that as a red flag because they should want to get to know you. But do your research, look into those photos and make sure that it is a real property.
Yeah, a lot of red flags. Yeah, we don't
Yeah,
care. We don't care if you're able to pay. It's
you're
fine. You
great.
can move in, but you have to pay me right now.
I'm getting good vibes from you?
That's all I need to know.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it.
So some red flags to look out for. We just covered that, but some tips to avoid being scammed. So if you're out there in the market looking to rent a property and you're all in, um, be sure to research the property online. This is something that I personally do with identity theft cases. It's very easy to simply search an address and who lives. Google that, you will find property records. It will tell you
Mhm.
who lives there currently, who has lived there in the past. Sometimes it will even mention if it is a rental situation. So you might be able to find that information online. Definitely do your research. Like I said, meet that person, the landlord in person. Make sure you know who you're going to be paying rent to. That's a big commitment. Avoid any of those sketchy payments, like we mentioned. This is a big red flag for any situation where they may really try to force you into a very strange way of making a payment.
Mhm.
Make sure you're reading the lease carefully, you understand it completely. Use payment methods that you're comfortable with. Certainly ask for references, and then never send money to somebody you haven't met. So again, establish that relationship, do your research, look for these key red flags. You're about to enter an agreement with somebody, so you want to make sure that you're doing your due diligence to protect yourself. But if you can't find the answers, there's probably a reason why.
Absolutely. Um, yeah, big charity scams. Now we're in
Oh,
hurricane season. Let's talk
I
about it.
Yeah,
know.
exactly. Right in the middle of it.
Hmm.
So fake charity scams, fraudsters will pose as legitimate charitable organizations, might even use copycat names or say they're associated with one that you recognize. There's a very recognizable name when they're not. They want to solicit donations from unsuspecting people. Of course, all they want to do is divert the funds away from the causes and put that into their own pockets. They have no intention of donating it toward a good cause. Um, but this often comes up during natural disasters, global crisis, other high profile events. Those times maybe when we're not thinking as clearly as we should, or we're reacting based on emotion or wanting to help.
Right.
During those
Hmm.
times, it can certainly come up. So, what we can do, here's some red flags to look for. Of course, high pressure tactics, like with any scam, or vague explanations. They might not, when you ask them questions, they might not be able to give you a good explanation as to what your funds are going to be used for, or what their program does.
Mhm.
Maybe unusual payment methods, like Lacey was saying, pay in a way that you're comfortable with. But when it comes to this, if they're maybe you like to write a check to your favorite charity every year, and that's how you do your record keeping, that's what you prefer.
Right.
But all of a sudden, this place that you're working with now, they want only payment in crypto, or we can only take gift cards, things like that just aren't right. Lack of transparency, more so, of course, what the funds are going to be used for. They can't give you a straightforward answer. And just be aware of any cold calls or spam emails, or maybe they're thanking you for donations that you didn't even make. It might just be to get the conversation rolling and get it started, or maybe have you question that maybe you did, but can they actually tell you details on that? If you ask them, oh, what's the record of me donating, and they can't give
Right.
you any information there. Yes, that'd be pretty odd.
That's one of those, they're just making sure there's a live person. So if you
Yeah.
engage, they're okay, that you open the door. So really good
Yep.
tip on
Right.
that.
Then they'll see how far it can go.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then some tips we can use to avoid this. We do want to ask questions about what their mission is and their programs. Certainly can research the charity online. Double check the web addresses, making sure it actually matches up to the charities that you're familiar with. I would not provide any personal or financial information unless you absolutely trust them. Maybe you've worked with them for a very long time. Be skeptical of any unsolicited emails or really any sort of contact that you weren't expecting. And to avoid giving cash is a good idea. Cash, once it exchanges hands, is hard to track. So maybe use a credit card or a check instead. And we would also say just not play into the emotions, especially during a
Yeah.
stressful time. We understand wanting to be generous and wanting to help other people. Certainly, that's a great thing. But unfortunately, scammers, that's what they want to prey upon. If they can get us, to feel a certain way or to act quickly, they will certainly do that.
Yeah, and all of these scams that we've talked about, I think, the kind of the biggest thing is that the fraudsters are targeting people and they're using emotions to get
Yeah.
them to give up information or to send money. There's some emotions involved, whether it's a need for a human connection, a need for
Yeah.
a job, a place to live, or even the need to give back to people who have endured a crisis, which is so disheartening. But
Yeah.
It is.
honestly, these people, they don't care.
Mhm.
Their end goal is to get as much money as they can out of vulnerable um, consumers. And the charity one really gets me because it's, and being a Florida resident, we've seen natural disasters. Everyone knows someone who's been personally affected.
Yeah.
And to think that when a natural disaster happens, you guys, our fraud team, are like on high alert, like, okay, are we gonna have some victims here that you have to help through and navigate that.
Yeah.
Um, it's really heartbreaking, but
Right.
again, I mean, that's why we do this to, talk about and educate consumers so that they don't become victims. But I think now we can talk about really like how much consumers have lost to scams.
Certainly. Yep. These are some numbers from last year. So it looks like 1 in 5 people have reported a loss due to imposter scams. And just to put that on an average per person, in a dollar amount, it was 7,000 was the average loss per person from an imposter scam. And the highest source of losses are from scammers using social media. There's been a reported 1.4 billion in losses. So we
Mhm.
talked a lot about social media before, and how it can be a great tool, and you use it to keep in touch with
Mhm.
family and friends and sharing things, funny videos. whatever it
Yeah.
may be. But unfortunately, the scammers really prefer to use it also. It just gives them, a platform that they can use. They could be anybody or say that they're anybody. Um, and yeah, they take full advantage of it.
Mhm.
Like I mentioned before, when, talking about scams and fraud, decades ago, maybe, I think our older generation, they were easier targets. Um, like people would use, social security fraud and, things like that. But now it's like there are so many avenues for fraudsters to get to consumers, social media being a huge one. And the thing is with that, there are people of all ages. There's
Yep.
no there's no specific demographic that is more susceptible than others, to be honest, because they're good at what they do. They really
Yeah.
are.
Oh, they
So,
are. They can be pretty sophisticated. Sometimes
mhm,
we're impressed with what we see,
mhm.
in a negative way.
I
Unfortunately.
know.
Yeah,
Right,
Yeah.
right.
right.
And one thing we keep preaching is this is not limited to the older generation anymore. It is literally everyone,
Yeah,
and everybody has a phone in their pocket, and that is their access to you. And
Yeah.
it's
absolutely.
very sad. Yeah. So I want to cover some ways to protect yourself. Just in general, these are great rules of thumb. So be sure to use a reputable antivirus software. I wouldn't just randomly Google and take one that
Mhm.
you haven't done your research on. So the key is to do your research. But Norton Antivirus, any popular antivirus software would be
Right.
great to have. You can have it run in the background just to check to see if you have anything um, unfortunate on your computer, like malware, viruses,
Hmm.
whatever it is. So it's a great way to protect your devices. Be sure if you are using email or receiving some strange links, um, certainly turn on those spam filters, report your emails that you don't want to receive as spam so you can have them filter out of your site. Then you don't let the curiosity get the best of you. So that's a big one is
Yes.
don't don't even play with them. If you know it's spam, just don't.
Yeah. Don't
Uh,
engage.
yes. Unfortunately, well, fortunately, this is my job and I love it. But one day I did get a spam text and it was to a bunch of numbers. And so I responded and said, "Hey, everybody, this is a spam text. Please don't click that link. Please don't interact." And let me tell you, I got text messages for months
Oh
from
gosh.
random numbers with random things. And they share that information. They're like, hey,
Yeah.
somebody has this number, it's active, or somebody has this email and it's active.
Right.
Let's target them with anything. So don't let the
Hmm.
curiosity get the best of you. Um, and in reference to those emails, you can actually hover over a URL. So I really love this trick. But if you just put your mouse over the link that you see, there's actually a little box that will pop up and tell you exactly where you're going. So if you really want to make sure that that link you're about to click is going to where you think it's going to go, just hover over it before you click, or you can just search the website directly, which is what I do. Um,
Right. If
be
you're on your
sure.
phone, you can't really hover.
No. So maybe just, search it yourself.
Yeah.
Um, And then also be sure to keep your security software, your browser, all of that up to date. I know it's a little bit of an inconvenience to have those updates go through. You want to just get on your computer and go, or on your phone, but these are very important. The reason why we have updates is to patch those loopholes that those fraudsters discovered. So,
Yeah.
extremely important. As well as with antivirus software, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of browsers now offer pop-up blockers that are built right into your browser. So that's something to look into if you just want to keep yourself from those, unfortunate spam pop-ups that happen on all websites.
Right.
Um, you can also set up two-factor authentication. I highly recommend this. I mean, a moment of inconvenience to receive an additional code to email or to text really can save you if somebody does get your email or your password. And then also be sure to look up the company's phone number and or call directly. So Jessica mentioned imposter scams and the loss to imposter scams. This is a big one. Somebody calling, posing as your financial institution, your utility company. It may show up on your phone as that place. They may ask you some personal information. When in doubt, hang up, look up that phone number directly, and just give them a call to confirm they are reaching out to you.
These are all great tips. And yeah, like you said, like some of them are a little inconvenient, even,
Yeah.
like updating your browser and keeping
Hmm.
your antivirus software up to date, all of that stuff. It
Yeah.
is so having your identity stolen is a huge inconvenience
Yeah,
and way harder to bounce back from. So
absolutely.
yeah, pick your poison,
Yeah, absolutely.
but these are really good tips. And Lacey has been telling me these things for years, so they're ingrained in my head. Thank you, Lacey.
So these are some of fantastic resources, and we use them personally. But I will also say we've worked with the FBI, we've worked with police departments in the past, with filing police reports or helping out victims. We worked with the FBI, with the government fraud and stuff like that during the pandemic, and they all recommend these websites. So a lot of times too, when you go in to file a police report, if you are a victim of a scam, they may tell you to use these resources.
Mm.
So IC3.gov is kind of a newer one that we've learned about within the last couple years, but this is an internet crime complaint center. It reports directly to the FBI, which is pretty cool. But you go in, you fill out some information on, unfortunately, what you fell victim to, or maybe you didn't, but you kind of went through the process. You can still report to them. This helps them track trends in your area, maybe helps track down these fraudsters and to prevent other people from falling victim. You can also report this to the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission. Also, you can go on there, report what you've been victim to or what you may have witnessed. But the FTC also is just a great way to keep track of what's going on in the world fraud wise. So it will tell you this is what's currently happening, or this breach happened recently. Here's what you can do. Even if you're just curious, like if you have a family member who fell victim to a scam, you can look up that particular scam and it'll walk you through every single step. It's really great at holding your hand through the process.
This is a fan favorite. The FTC website, the fraud team, they've told me about this website years ago. I visited just because I'm curious, what are fraudsters doing outside of the world of banking? How else are they targeting consumers? And so I subscribed. And so I will get their emails. So they'll
Mm.
have a consumer alert. And of all the emails I get, I make sure to open those. Partly I'm curious. And
Yeah.
if there's someone that I love that I can share that information with, it's appropriate. So I love that site. It's
In this
so much.
case, let
Yeah.
curiosity get the best of you.